What's up, everyone? I'm the Orange Ranger, and welcome to Mycorrhiza. This game is a demo that is basically a love letter to the horror manga genre. Basically, it's a visual novel. So, let's see what's behind door number 1. Whoa! Alright, this is off to a great start. Act 1. Pets. My eyes were burning. It felt like hot coals were lying on my eyelids. I slowly opened them and attempted to heave myself up from the cold asphalt. But I failed. My whole body was heavy and my head felt like it was being squashed by a hydraulic press. After a few attempts, I finally succeeded and tried to make out where I was. The fog in my mind lifted slowly and I realized that I was in a dark alleyway. My vision was still blurry and I had trouble keeping my eyes open, but I could tell that I had never seen this place before. Slowly, my heart began to race. Was I abducted? Mugged? What had happened to me? I hastily checked my body, fortunately finding no wounds. Why was I feeling this weak then? Maybe I was drugged? As I tried to recall what might have happened to me, my eyes finally focused and I could see the house in front of me. In fact, it was the only house on the street with its lights on. The dirty yellow glow shone through every single visible window. I felt some relief knowing that the tenants were awake. Perhaps they could tell me where I was. I wouldn't mind some warmth either. I approached the front door. It took me some searching to find the doorbell through the overgrown ivy. A deep gong rang from within the house when I pressed in. The sound, amplified by the cold wind cutting through my shirt, made me tense up. What an odd choice for a doorbell sound, I thought while rubbing my upper arms to warm myself. I waited. No one answered. My mind twisted in confusion. Why was no one coming? I rang the doorbell again. Then I tried knocking. No response. No one was coming. I didn't understand. Did they forget to turn off the lights and go on vacation or something? As a last resort, I tried turning the doorknob and it actually opened? This worried me. Did something happen to the family living here? Perhaps I should find a phone and call the police. Suddenly, a loud crash echoed through the street. My heart started to pound as my body tensed up. I wanted to dash into the house, but my feet refused to move. What was that sound? Was someone out there? Out here? Pictures of otherworldly monsters and armed kidnappers popped into my mind as my eyes scanned the darkness. The world was silent once more. I was still on edge, but my body slowly started to relax as I regained my composure. I decided I didn't want to find out what that was. Cautiously, I stepped through the threshold and firmly closed the door behind me. I felt an immediate lurch of guilt since I was trespassing into a stranger's home, but I'd rather face the police questioning than wander around a strange neighborhood in the middle of the night. Hello? Is anyone here? No answer. The house was eerily quiet. I cautiously ventured further down the front hall. Perhaps I could find a telephone. I stopped in front of one of the doors. A dim yellow light seeped silently through the bottom crack. I turned the knob. Locked. Drat! Locked! Oh no, it's locked. Anyway, then the next one, also locked. Oh, drat! They all seemed to be. I frowned. Why were the lights behind these locked doors lit? It gave me an uneasy feeling. The door at the very end of the hall was the only one that I hadn't tried yet. I grasped its handle and turned it slowly. It swung open to complete darkness. Once again, my body tensed up while my mind started to conjure horrific images. A beast with dislocated limbs and crooked teeth creeping toward me from the darkness. A floor littered with corpses and walls stained with blood. A giant spider sitting in a corner, waiting for its chance to strike. My hand shook as I reached to flick on the light. It was an utterly ordinary bedroom. My heartbeat slowly calmed down as I realized that I seemed to be safe. I almost felt silly. getting scared of nothing. A quick search yielded nothing but barren, dusty shelves. The bed was the only meaningful object present. Slowly but surely, a wave of fatigue washed over me. The more I looked at the bed, the more tempting it became. With my adrenaline rush fading away, I found that I was more exhausted than I had realized. Like a worm worming its way into an apple, a single thought slowly appeared in my mind. I had to sleep. That was soon the only thing I could think of as my consciousness faded. I had to sleep. The world turned dark and the soft covers of the bed pulled me deeper and deeper into the black abyss. Some people have gotten as little as a couple hours of sleep the last couple of nights. In all silent film fashion, let's hope this will all be over soon. I shot awake. It was as if no time had passed. I hardly remembered falling asleep. Feeling a bit better, I decided to take another look around the house. The fact that no one was here, even though the lights were on, was still nagging at the back of my mind. But I was more confident that I'd be able to find help now that it was daytime. I left the bedroom to retry the doors, just in case. They were still locked. I would have at least liked to take a shower. I smelled my clothes and they had indeed started to smell slightly sour. It would have been nice to access the kitchen as well, although it was doubtful there would be much food here given the house's empty state. The place seemed to have nothing left to offer. I'd be better off out in the streets now that it was day, even if I was still missing my wallet. I left the house for the bright sunlight. The back street didn't seem so bad anymore. I found it to be rather cozy and quaint. I made my way down the path until I heard the faint sound of conversation in the distance. A weight lifted from my heart when I first glimpsed people walking around in a pedestrian area. There weren't too many of them, though, and as I looked around, I got the feeling that it was a rather small town. Trees and flowers were planted at regular intervals, which gave it more of a rural atmosphere. It didn't matter. I could finally ask for help. "Excuse me. Could you tell me where I am?" The woman blinked at my approach. She frowned and scowled in my general direction. This is Kedjum Heath, however you pronounce that. She looked uncomfortable talking to me, though I thanked her and let her be. Kedjum Heath. I had never heard of a town like that before. Where? How did I end up here? The thought of being somewhere I didn't recognize scared me. How was I supposed to get back home if I didn't have the slightest idea where to go? I took a deep breath to calm myself down. The next best bet would be asking someone to allow me to make a call from their mobile phone. I approached an older man in a business suit. "Excuse me, may I use your phone? I'm a bit lost and would like to call a friend of mine so he can pick me up." His lips curled into a grimacing frown. Sorry, I'm in a bit of a hurry." I approached person after person, but even after what felt like several hours, I had no luck. No one wanted to lend an unkempt, half-dressed stranger their phone. As I made my way through a side street, I heard two elderly women whispering to each other. "I heard some violent incidents recently. Most got away with just a flesh wound, saying that they were attacked by someone or something." "Yeah, I heard that too. I wonder if it has anything to do with the pet disappearances. I heard of another cat that hadn't come back in several days." I was so focused on the conversation that I almost ran into a girl. I mumbled an apology until I realized that she had approached me on purpose. Hi. You need to call someone, right?" She extended her hand and offered me her phone. "How did you know?" "People have been talking about you. We have had some violent crimes here recently. Everyone is a little on edge. Many pets have been getting sick. Some say someone has been poisoning them." She nervously shuffled her feet and glanced away. "Thank you. I won't take long." I took the phone and dialed a friend's number. But the call didn't go through. I tried it again, but the result was the same. Maybe his phone was turned off? I tried my parents' house phone, then my job's front desk, then my boss's personal cell. Each time the call failed. I was sure that I had the right numbers. Maybe the phone had a bad connection? It seems like the calls won't connect for some reason. Maybe you will have more luck trying a landline. My phone does act up sometimes. You might be right. Still, thank you a lot. I didn't want to hold her up any longer, so I gave her phone back and wandered off with a rushed farewell. Leaving that way may have been a bit rude, but I was too frustrated to care. I just wanted to look for another way to get in contact with someone I knew. It occurred to me that I should have asked her for directions to the police station. I turned to look for her, but she had already vanished. As I made my way through town, I could now definitely feel the tension in the air. That girl was right. Everyone was on edge. While I was passing by an alleyway, something caught my eye. They were too big to be rats. I couldn't really make anything out other than their eerie, glowing eyes. Maybe it was a cat gang searching the trash for food. Apropos food, I was starving. But I couldn't possibly just ask random people to feed me since my wallet was missing and I didn't have any money on me to buy something. Oh, there were oddly tempting looking plants growing nearby. As I stared at them, I felt a pull. Their strange appearance hypnotized me, and without me noticing, my feet inched closer and closer and closer. Oh, eat them. I couldn't really think while hungry, and who knew how long it's been since I've eaten, so it's probably either this or starving. I dug in. They didn't even taste that bad. Kinda grassy, but edible, although it grew harder and harder to chew with every bite. Something red dripped onto the ground. I soon realized a liquid was coming out of my mouth. I couldn't tell if it was blood or the plant's juices. More started to pour out as I panicked and tried to figure out what was going on. While feeling around my mouth, I realized that I had become totally numb. Suddenly a fleshy chunk fell into the red pool that had started to form before my feet. Was that my tongue? My vision became blurry, and my stiff body hit the cold ground. It was dark when I woke up again. I could make out what was still lying next to the plants. It seemed like no one had bothered to help me. I tried to get up, but I couldn't. My whole body was paralyzed. I felt a sudden sting traveling from my head to my feet, and the pain grew by the second. I hate that sound so much. Something was happening to me. My hand, it was bending in weird ways. Not just my hand, my whole body. It was warping, but it seemed like it couldn't handle the transformation. My body writhed. Oh! And snapped in two. Okay, let's try that again. Maybe I shouldn't have eaten. Don't eat them. I broke away from the hypnotic pull of the plants. What was I thinking? It didn't matter how hungry I was. They may be poisonous. Yeah, no kidding. But my hunger was beginning to gnaw at my insides. My vision grew blurry. Who knew how long... I was reading that right. Who knew how long it's been since I've eaten? Suddenly I collapsed and the world around me vanished. I heard that another team had some problems with the scientist of theirs who ended up being banned from their research center. She apparently performed experiments on humans who were... I can almost sympathize with her. I was gonna say redacted, pretty much. It was dark when I was awoke. It seemed like no one had bothered to help me. I tried to get up, but I couldn't. My whole body was paralyzed from hunger. Something was shuffling by my ear. I felt the sniffing of an animal. Perhaps one of those cats I saw earlier. I couldn't bring myself to look. It lost interest and walked past me toward the plants. I heard more followed. As they padded into view, I noticed that something was off about them. It must have been my mind playing tricks on me. My hunger was overwhelming. Something about their bodies was wrong. They started to eat the plants. They were smacking rather loudly and made unnatural, fleshy sounds. Every now and then, one would pause and give off a low growl that didn't at all sound like a cat. More like a slightly higher-pitched bear growl. After a while, the sounds diminished, and I felt their presence vanish. I gathered my strength and forced myself to my feet. What had just happened? What were those creatures? The violent crimes I had heard about earlier popped into my mind. My hands began to shake slightly. What would have happened if I hadn't been paralyzed, and if they had noticed that I was still alive? Most house lights were still lit. I mustn't have been out long. Once again, my body gave off a deep growl. It was as if my stomach was eating itself. I had to get some food or else I was in danger of collapsing again. Being as desperate as I was, I approached the next best house and knocked. I was surprised when the door actually opened. Hi there, come on in. How nice of you to visit. Do we know each other? Before me stood a fashionably dressed woman with a big smile on her face. At first glance, she seemed welcoming, but her movements were rather stiff and almost mechanical, as if they had been practiced over and over again. She took another, more thorough look at me, and seemed to realize that we did, in fact, not know each other. Oh, you must be a new neighbor then. Please come in. She disappeared before I could correct her. I hesitantly followed her inside. Bad idea! On my way in, I saw a food bowl near the entrance with some of the strange-looking plants I had seen earlier in it. Huh. She'd been feeding those to her pet. I peeked after the woman into the living room. A man leapt to his feet as he saw me and stretched his big hand out to me. His other arm hung down limply. Apparently, he wasn't able to move it. Hi there. It's nice to meet you. How are you doing? I reciprocated his firm handshake, and he cheerfully gestured me to take a seat beside him. To my surprise, the girl who helped me earlier was here as well. She gave me a small wave. It started to feel like a festivity. We should have neighborhood get-togethers like these more often. Oh right, this is... She turned and frowned in my direction while trying to remember a name she hadn't asked me before. Scott. I'm Scott. Right, Scott. He moved in nearby recently, I think, so I thought we should invite him in as well. Certainly. It's nice to meet you. Oh, no, I'm not really. Oh, right, food. Give me a second. The woman rushed into the kitchen and came out with steaming dishes of food. I could make out different kinds of meat, baked potatoes, and more. My stomach gave off a deep growl and my mouth began to water. Any thought of honesty about my origin was gone. The other visitors started piling food onto their plates and I followed suit. As I devoured it and life came back into my body, I let my eyes wander over the others. Everyone seemed to be rather tense, especially the woman and the man. Their movements were rather stiff. Every now and then they threw glances each other's way, glances that seemed to indicate mistrust. The woman seemed to especially be eyeing the cup the man was drinking out of. Every now and then, when they'd noticed each other's looks, they'd put on a fake smile. The girl seemed like she hadn't planned to be here in the first place. Was she just dragged into it, just like I was? As I was cleaning my plate of its scraps, something important flashed into my mind. Excuse me, would you mind if I used your phone? The woman tissed. I'm afraid I don't have one. I never cared for those buggers. She looked over to the man. Maybe he can use yours? Of course. I can show you to my house once we're ready to go. I gave off a sigh of relief and thanked the man. He waved his hand in the air. No problem at all. Please excuse me for one moment though. He shuffled out of the room, presumably toward the bathroom. Alright, I'll make some more tea. She scooped up the man's cup and left me alone with the girl. I cleared my throat and nodded in her direction. Thank you again for lending me your phone. I did appreciate that. You're welcome. I hope you will have more luck with the landline. Yeah, I hope so too. And I guess that was the end of the conversation. Perhaps she felt uncomfortable speaking to a weird-smelling stranger. I'm gonna go wash my dishes. And there she went. The other two were taking quite a while. I used the opportunity to let my eyes wander over the room. The walls were dressed with paintings of all kinds, pictures of nature, as well as more abstract drawings. Yeah, abstract. That's what that is. It doesn't look like a fleshy wall of eyes at all. And that plant looks oddly familiar. A fancy-looking framed piece of paper and a photograph that was standing on the drawer beneath them caught my eye. The former seemed to be an art degree, and the latter a picture of the man and woman when they were younger. They were standing somewhere that could be a university campus. Both had a genuine smile on their face. It seemed like their friendship went back quite a bit. Hey. Whoa! Did she sneak behind me? I thought I had a clear view of the kitchen entrance. I think I heard some rumbling coming from downstairs. It'd probably be good if you check it out in case she hurt herself. She was likely referring to the woman who had invited me in. You did? She has been gone for quite a while now. Maybe something did happen to her. Perhaps I should take a look. Or maybe not. Maybe that's an option. I felt her eyes follow me to the basement. I squinted down the stairs. It was almost pitch black. I swallowed back my nerves and carefully crept down the steps. Maybe I should have called out to the woman, but something told me not to. I managed to reach the bottom stair and peeked around the corner. There I saw the woman kneeling by lamplight in front of a large cage. A basket of the strange plants sat beside her. There. It's all right. Take a good sniff of the cup. We need to hurry, okay? I know that he's growing one too. Everyone is. Everyone wants to get rid of the competition. We need to hurry. She held the man's cup to the bars. Something in her voice disturbed me. Whatever was going on, I wanted no part of it. I returned to the living room as quietly as I could. There you are! All ready to go? Upon hearing the man's loud voice, I jumped a bit. What I had seen in the basement made me a bit anxious. I took a quick look around and saw that the girl was already gone. Sure, I'm ready. Leaving already? I just made some more tea. I turned to see the woman standing in the living room entrance with a put-on smile. Oh, sorry, dear. I'm just not young enough to stay out late like we used to. She put on a playful pout. Oh, you do wound me. Oh, you cad. How could you? Anyway, come by again. You know you're welcome any time. We bid our farewells and set out in the cold night. I was glad to leave. What I had seen was still nagging on my mind. The man might be in danger. I had to tell him. I hesitated. How was I supposed to tell him when I myself wasn't sure what I had seen? But I collected myself and went for it. To my surprise, he wasn't nearly as upset at the woman as I thought he would be. He actually seemed to be more upset at me. I think you should not have snooped around in someone's house who invited you over. I was left perplexed. What just happened? I thought I was warning him, but instead, I've been scolded like a child. His face relaxed and he gave me his usual smile. It seemed slightly pained this time. I suppose there's been no harm done. Perhaps he just didn't believe me. I couldn't blame him. I noticed more and more vacant houses as we crept through the town. Some were boarded up. Doors had been left wide open. Why are there so many empty houses here? These houses have been vacant for a while now. You need not worry. I was sure that I passed by here earlier, but I didn't notice any abandoned buildings back then. They couldn't have left so suddenly in just half a day, could they? An uneasy feeling started to fester inside me. Here we are. We stopped before a house that looked much like the other house in the town. He stepped inside. I hesitated at the entrance before trailing behind him. Come on in. No need to be shy. Do you want something to drink? No, thanks. The man hesitantly grunted and led me down the hallway. I only wanted to use a phone and get out. All the weirdness of the day had me on edge. But what if I still couldn't reach anyone? Where would I go? I was balancing a fine line between hope and despair, and the phone call would probably be what would topple me in either direction. All right, here you are. The phone was one of those old-fashioned ones that had a cord attached to the receiver. What do you mean old-fashioned? That's my childhood that you're injuring right there. At least it had buttons instead of a rotary dial. Oh, thank goodness, like I don't know how to use a rotary phone. I picked up the receiver and tried a number. Am I doing something wrong? There's no dial tone. Huh? Let me see. He took the receiver from my hand and pressed a few buttons. He let out a disappointing sigh. Not again. Those darn rodents keep getting to my cables. I'll go take a look at it. Feel free to make yourself at home. Oh, in case you get thirsty. He fetched a small bottle of soda from the kitchen, gave it to me, and went into the basement. It seemed like I wouldn't be able to leave quite so soon. Once I held a drink in my hand, I did start to get thirsty. I took a sip and thought about what to do next. Take a look around. I'm getting mighty suspicious. From what the lady said, it sounds like a lot of people might be doing whatever she was doing. Possibly those plants. So I'm going to take a look around. And probably get myself killed. Anyway, what should I check out? The pictures. Let's check out the pictures. I took a look at the pictures hanging on the wall. There weren't too many, but he seemed to be pretty cheerful in all of them. Especially the ones with his dog. For some reason, I hadn't seen it around. Nothing else caught my eye. Okay, what should I check out? Let's try the living room. There's only one room over. Surely he wouldn't mind. He said I should feel at home after all. The living room was minimalistic and unimpressive. A TV stood in the corner, gathering dust. His bookshelf was well maintained, on the other hand. I looked over the books. He seemed pretty interested in biology. Maybe he was a teacher, or even a researcher, just like myself. I'd love to chat with him about his field sometime, once I get out of this mess. I chose a random book and opened it. I quickly shut it to recheck the title. It seemed I had pulled out a fantasy book instead of a biology text. Evolutionary Development, a practical study guide. That would be a rather weird name for a fantasy novel, but the depictions on the pages confirmed it being fiction. The pages show drawings of creatures I'd never seen before, accompanied by detailed graphs and diagrams. I guess this could be one of those fake science art pieces, like what the Voynich manuscript is theorized to be. Yeah, something like that. I returned the book and went back out into the hall. Alright, it's all done. I jumped. Sorry, I didn't mean to scare you. No, it's fine. Good thing he didn't catch me snooping around. The phone should be working now. Feel free to give it a try. I'll give you some space. Call me when you're done. I took the bottle I had drunk from earlier and left through the hallway. I had an odd sense of deja vu. I shook it off and started dialing some numbers. They were the same that I had already tried on the girl's mobile phone. Once again, they failed to connect. How could that be? I was 100% certain that the numbers were correct. I tried all the numbers of friends, family, and even work colleagues that I could think of. Till finally, yes, hello? It was a woman's voice I didn't recognize. I was certain that I had dialed the number of one of my work colleagues. Excuse me, isn't this Tom's telephone number? I don't know who that is. Are you another scam caller? Don't call me again. She hung up. Alright, something was definitely wrong here. It might be best to talk to the man and see if he can help me somehow. Maybe he had a clue as to how I can get back home. I crept down the hall. You went this way, right? I began to hear some murmuring. A steady chill ran down my back. The sound was coming from the basement. The old floorboards squealed beneath my toes. I saw flickers of a weak light coming from down the steps. I took them as gently as I could as I held a hand over my mouth to quiet my breath. I reached the bottom and turned a corner. It was just like before. The man knelt before a big cage, a small lamp next to him, and held something up to the bars. He hissed to whatever was inside. Yes, yes. You have the scent now, don't you? We must take care of this one tonight. He's curious. You'll find the secret much faster than the others. Oh, no. We can't have him making something like you, too. It's kill or be killed in this town. My stomach dropped out from underneath me as I heard the horrible scraping from inside the cage. I took a step back, bumping into a wall. Before I could react, I had accidentally switched on the main light. A sudden flood of white blinded me for a moment. Once my eyes adjusted, the first thing I saw was it! Oh ho 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 ho! What the heck is this? The man was screaming at me, but I could barely think about him. I couldn't look away from that creature! It was cowering inside a dirty cage that seemed to be too small for him. It had features of a human, but I could also see some elements that were distinctly dog-like. His mouth was way too big, and the inside of it was filled with seemingly random set teeth, or at least something that resembled teeth. Worst of all, though, were the enormous eyes staring back at me. The man fumbled with the lock on the cage. My feet finally began to move. I ran out of the house and into the streets. All the while, one thought had frantically run through my head. I had to get out. I had to get away from this demented town. With this, though, clouding in my mind, I hadn't realized that I had exited town already and was now in a big grassy plain. Breathing heavily with a fear flooding my mind, I had almost not noticed how heavy my legs had become. Soon I was struggling to stay on my feet, and my vision slowly darkened from exhaustion and panic. I wanted to look back to see how close the monster was, but I was too afraid of seeing it right behind me. I gathered my courage and quickly glanced behind me, and to my surprise, the thing wasn't following me. I didn't know if it had ever followed me in the first place, or if it seemed like the man wanted to send it after me to kill me. Realizing that I was safe for now, I stopped. My legs were numb and almost gave in, but I managed to keep standing. I couldn't believe what I had just seen. It couldn't be real. There was no way to explain what I had seen, and every inch of my body repulsed the idea of such a monster existing, but I had seen it with my own 2 eyes. I continued on, at a slower pace this time, and soon came to a small but quickly flowing river. It wasn't a good night to get my clothes wet, but it looked small enough for me to jump over with a running start. I wasn't the athletic type, but I managed to leap over the gap. After walking for what felt like hours, I caught a glimpse of a town. It looked quite a bit bigger than the one I had just left. The concrete buildings looked like the needles from the distance. I wasn't fully sure what I felt at that moment. Part of me was relieved about seeing some civilization, being able to look for help. Another part of me was still in shock over what I had just experienced, but I was too tired to try to make sense of it. So I pushed myself onward, using the remaining strength I had left. Soon it's going to be over. That's what I naively kept mumbling to myself as I dragged myself closer towards the next nightmare. Hi, Game Director here. Thank you for trying out Mycorrhiza's demo. Oh man, it was starting to really get good. Now that the first door has finally been opened, I'll work hard to make sure that the second one will be open as soon as possible. My mouth is so tired. So yeah, that was Mycorrhiza. I'll put the link to this game in the description below. I don't know if there are other endings or other ways to reach the ending, but there you go. There are 2 other doors for 2 other chapters that they may release sometime in the future, and I might make videos of that. We'll see. But until then, thank you all so much for watching. Click the links in the description below for more videos that I've done, and I do think you'll like my t-shirts, the Orange Ranger Icon t-shirt and the Orange Ranger Gaming t-shirt. Those are in the description below. So be sure to leave a like, subscribe if you're new, and hit that bell to stay caught up with future videos. Until next time, may the power protect you, and I'm the Orange Ranger, powering down.